Hey guys, it's your boy Newbie Coder here, dropping another video. This one's gonna be on Python variables and data types. In the last couple of videos, I talked about how to install Python on your computer, and then I also discussed how to set up virtual environments to isolate your projects. Now I think it's time we jump right into programming in Python. So let's get right into it. Here are my notes. We're gonna run through this in the next few minutes, but first I want to open up the terminal. Now, for those of you that aren't aware of the terminal, it basically allows you to run multiple commands on your computer, and it's very powerful. So you can check, for instance, present working directory. This is a command, and it tells you that I am in this folder right here. You might be in a different folder, so what I suggest is to change directory cd into your directory where you want to store the Python files that you're gonna create. So for me, I've created this file here. If I go into developer, YouTube content, Python programming, that's what's shown here. That's the path. Okay, so I'm in this file, and this is an empty directory, but I can also check from here and see that when I do list, it is empty. All right, cool. So you can run Python code in this terminal by starting up the Python interpreter. So you can type Python or Python 3 and press enter, and as you can see now, Python version that you're running, and now you're ready to type code that is in Python. So let's go ahead and try the print function. If you're not aware of this yet, don't worry about it. This is a piece of Python code, which is a print function, and it's a function because it has an open bracket and a closed bracket, and it has an input value. And we're saying that take this hello string or this phrase and print it out. And if we press enter, it's gonna go ahead and print it out. So pretty straightforward. That's how it works. You give it some Python command, and it's gonna give you an output based on what functionality you have provided, right? Now the problem here is that you're gonna run through this code line by line. It's gonna make your life miserable, right? You need something that is more interactive. You can write thousands of lines of code and run it all together. And for that, we use what's called an integrated development environment, or IDE. One of the most popular ones, and the one that I use, is VS Code, Visual Studio Code. There's also other ones like Sublime, which are also pretty cool. So what I suggest is you download. You go to Google and you search VS Code, download, and you will go to this website, and you can download for Windows or Mac or Linux, right? So once you do that, you're able to, I'm gonna quit out of this interpreter. All right, you're able to run your code in that IDE environment. So I'm gonna open up the IDE here. So once you start, this is what it's gonna look like. You're gonna have this pane here with the Explorer, so open folder. Now the idea here is that you can open the directory that you have your project in within this IDE, and create files and all that sort of cool stuff. So if you click open folder, you can go to your project file, which was Python programming for me here, and open it up, and now you are within that directory. So I can go and click this button and create a new Python file. Let's call it newbiefile.py. So you gotta make sure you type the extension of the file, because the way the computer understands your file is based on the extension. So if you don't specify that it's a .py file, the computer won't know that this is Python code in this file, and it won't work. So similarly, and just to give you an idea, let's say I do newbiefile.json, you can see that it understands this as a totally different file, right? JSON is another file extension. So we're not going to worry about that. Today we're only focused on Python. One thing which I suggest you can do is hold Control Shift and P, and you'll have this command prompt. I would recommend installing code command in path. That just makes your life easier, because what you could do is when you are in your project directory on the terminal, you can just type code dot and it will open up just this view right here that we're seeing. So it'll open up the Python program folder and any files within that folder. This is code is short for VS Code, and dot is basically the current directory. So run this file, run this current directory in code. All right, so cool. So now that we're in Python, let's go back to our notes here and see what's next. Okay, so variable. What is a variable? Now, variable is a name that is used to refer to a value stored in the computer's memory. So you can assign a value to a variable. Now, what does that mean? Let's go back here and start typing some Python code. Okay, so x equals to 5. Now, what we're saying is x is a variable and 5 is the value that is assigned to x. Okay, so this is different than mathematics. I know most of you would have taken a math course at some point in your life, and you know that you have to calculate the value of x or the value of y, and it's equal to a certain number, right? Let's say 5 or 10, and it continues to be that number throughout, right? There's no way you can change that number, otherwise it's going to be a wrong answer. That's not how it works here in programming. What you're saying is you're assigning 5 to x. So you're basically saying x is 5, right? But then you can also change the assignment and later on say that x is now equal to 10, right? Or 15 or 20, and you can do this as many times as you want. And the way it works is if you run the print function again, and you provide this variable to the print function, and you also provide this variable to again right after you assign it another value, you'd see that it will give you two different numbers. So I'm gonna just run this for now, and you can see it output 5 based on this command, and it output 10 based on this command. So the value assigned to x can change, unlike in mathematics, right? That's the advantage of variables. And you might ask, why is this useful, right? So imagine if you had x equals to 10, right? Your manager tells you x equals 10. Go ahead and print it out, 10 times. So you do that 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then you're like, okay, I'm gonna print x 10 times. And then he asks you to do it 1,000 times, and you go ahead and print it. Now, look at the advantage here, right? What if you did not know about variables, or there's no way to use variables? You would have to basically print out 10 every single time, right? You would have to say print 10, and then do this 10 times, right? And then you'd basically have 10, 10, 10, 10 all printed. The advantage here is that if your manager changes his or her mind and says, x was actually 11, I made a mistake. So look how many times I need to change the value. If I was using a variable, only once. But if I was hard coding the value, this is called hard coding, when you actually type out the literal value, then I would have to go and change it all individually and do it 10 times, right? So it's not too much of a problem right now because my code is only like 20 lines, but when you have a full software development, you can have thousands of lines of code, and variables are a really handy tool that's used throughout. All right, so I hope that was useful. Now, before I go to the next one, let me explain the print function a little bit. So, like I said, you can either print the variable, you can print the value, right? Both ways, you're gonna get 5, as you can see down here. But you can also provide this function a string, okay? So, for instance, let's say I want to print hello, right? So I don't mention hello previously, so I'm just giving it this input and asking for an output, and it will print hello, right? I could also provide this as a variable, so I could say y equals to hello, and then I could just provide y to the print function, and it will still print hello. So you can notice that the variable assignment is not limited to just numbers. You can do strings, and you can do other data types, which we'll talk about. Okay. The other thing you could do with a print function is you can add string and a variable, right? So you could say hello is the value of, and then you would close the quotation. So quotation is basically defined as a string or a phrase, and then you would put a comma here, and then you would put the variable that you want to print out, right? So if you print that, you would say hello is the value of, and then you have this space here that's shown here, and then the value of y comes from hello here. Okay. So this is pretty cool. There's another way you can type this out. That's called the f string. So you could just simply keep everything the same. Start off with an f before the string, and you don't need a comma in this situation. All you do is everything is enclosed in the string, and you would literally just put these curly brackets and put in the value of the variable in there. So now these two will print the same lines, right? So that's how variable assignment and variable functionality works. Let's go back to the notes. Now we talked about data types, right? So there are different data types, and I have a table here which hopefully will explain things a little better. So we looked at integers, so whole numbers without any decimal places. Example would be 11, 10, 20, 5, 6. Float is decimal places. So, you know, it could be 1, 2, it could be 3, 4, as many numbers as you get, right? There's a limit to it, obviously. String is a sequence of characters, so it could be one word, it could be with space, multiple words, it could be words and numbers, etc., right? Boolean is a true or false, so your program can understand a true or a false condition and run based on that. A list is basically a sequence, so characters or numbers, so like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or x, y, you can have a variety, right? That's a list, and it has a square brackets. A tuple is similar to a list, but it's immutable, meaning that you can't change the values once it's set. A set is a unique collection, so like out of this, if you were to do the set of this, you would get 1, 2, x, y, because 1 is unique and you don't need to specify that it occurs 2 times. Or so like these are all unique values. Dictionary is also very useful. It basically is a key value pair methodology. So you have curly brackets, and you have what's called a key, semicolon, and a value, right? So you can look up different values in your dictionary just by the keys, right? So, and we'll talk about that later. None type, you can also have like conditions where there's none, where you're looking for none, like no value. Yes, also possible. And then you have custom classes and objects. So let's go back. Now we talked about variable assignment, the different types of data types. One way you can check the data type is by simply using the type function. So if you hover your mouse over a function, it will kind of tell you what it does, the object's type, right? So it gives you the name. And what do you want to know the type of? You can just simply specify the variable, or you can even just put the whole string in there. But let's use variables because it's a cleaner way of doing things. Now, this won't give you an output. Oh, well, this will give you an output, but it won't print an output, right? So in order to do that, you will need to loop around it and print, right? So if you look at the print function, it basically prints the value. Okay, so when I do type, you can see class string, right? So this was string, but if I change y to x, right, now it should technically give us the type int. As you can see, it gives us the type int. What if I wanted to say that 5 is actually a string, not an integer, right? Now, one thing I forgot to mention is that in Python, the variable type is inferred. And what that means is if you say x equals to 5, it will be smart enough to conclude that 5 is in fact an integer. And if you give it this string, it's smart enough to understand that this is a string. So that it automatically infers that. That's why when we typed x and y, we got the different data types. So now that we know that, let's imagine that this 5 is actually a string and it's not an integer. We can actually convert that data type, right? So to do that, you would have to typecast it. And the way you do that is you cast variable you want to wrap around. So when I do int x, it basically says x is an integer. But since it's already an integer, this won't do much. What I want to say is that x is a string. So what I'm doing is I'm converting it into a string. So it says creates a new string object from the given object. So it will treat 5 like a string. And now to prove that to you, I will do the type. Actually, let's do it cleaner. So I'm going to assign this to a variable, right? So you can even assign functions to a variable. And what I'm going to do is type z. So we're doing the type function, and then we're printing the output of the type function. As you can see, it's string, and I believe this one is so. What I just did there is I created a comment, and you can do this by holding command and / here button. What a comment does is it tells the Python interpreter to not output anything that's in this code. Okay, so it's gonna skip through that. The way the code works is it's run line by line starting from the top. So it's gonna go here, read x, y, it's gonna print this, it's gonna print this, and it's gonna ignore this, and then it's gonna go here. So as you noticed, it did print it last time, right? It says class int because x was int here, and then we changed x to string. So the next time I run this print statement, it's only gonna print string. So when I go ahead and run that, as you can see, it no longer printed, it's an integer, and it printed the string. So that's how you can typecast and convert data types. You can also use expressions in Python, which is very useful. So for instance, similar to math, you can do x equals to 5, you can do y equals to 10, and then you can do sum equals to x plus y, and then you can print sum, or we can say, let's do an f string. So sum is equal to, and then we'll put that in the curly brackets here. Okay, so when I run this, you can say sum is equal to 15, right? It's adding x and y that we've given to this line here, and it's assigning the sum of this value to this variable, and then we're using that variable. So again, you notice variable doesn't need to be like one letter. You can have it like this. You can have it sum total. You can have this is called camel case. You can have it like this. This is called snake case, I believe. So there's a lot of things you can do, and you can just take that value and place it here, and it would still print you the same thing. So variables and data types, very powerful, and these are the fundamentals of Python programming. So it's really important that you wrap your head around these concepts. And I think with that, we pretty much have covered most of the basics. Cool. So we'll end it right here. Hope you guys enjoyed and learned a lot. See you in the next one. Bye-bye.